Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Foot Traffic. Today, you get to hear a special interview that I recently had with Rachel Cruze. Rachel Cruze is, yes, Dave Ramsey's daughter, but I will tell you, she brings a whole new spin to Ramsey Solutions. And as somebody who is a wife and a mom, I love her angles that she takes and the digging that she does. Her new book, Know Yourself, Know Your Money, has been perfectly timed with what is going on in the pandemic. And the decisions we've been making and why we're making those to really kind of dig deep and understand what you do with money and why you do certain things with money. We talk about how, your personal life has been impacting your business and vice versa, how you can grow up with siblings and be very different when it comes to money, or grow up and be just like your parents or the opposite of your parents. Really figuring out what you're doing with your money and why it's happening, like going to the root of it. I think you are going to love this episode. You guys go out and grab her new book, Know Yourself, Know Your Money. All right, let's jump into today's episode. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Foot Traffic. I am so excited because today I have Rachel Cruze here from Ramsey Solutions, and we are talking about Rachel's new book that just came out, Know Yourself, Know Your Money. Rachel, I'm so excited to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you, Stacy. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I want to share a funny story this morning. So we both had busy schedules, and because of that, we had to kind of kick the kids out 15 minutes early today for school. And don't worry, guys, they got donuts. They're very excited. No one has hurt feelings, but they wanted to know why. They're 5 and 7. What is going on? Why do we have to leave early? And I'm like, how do I explain who Rachel Cruze is to my 5 and 7-year-old? So I realized, I'm like, you guys, those junior adventure books that you like? Well, Rachel, I said, Dave wrote those books, and Dave is Rachel's dad. And they were like, Rachel is in the junior adventure books. Like they felt like I was interviewing this celebrity from their books. They're so excited. So how funny that they like made that connection. I love it.
I love that. That's so funny. Well, I had to leave about 15 minutes early to come here, and they were like, "Why?" I was like, "Because of Stacy and Foot Traffic. It's a podcast."
Yeah.
That's so
I love
great.
it. I love
That's
it.
so great.
So they're very excited. You are now the celebrity in their eyes. I'm sure we'll be reading
I
those
love
books
that.
tonight. But we're here talking about a different book. You came out with this new book this year called Know Yourself, Know Your Money. And I want to ask, like, as you're writing this book, how did the pandemic kind of maybe shift the book a little bit? Were you writing during it, before it? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually wrote it all before because
Okay.
I had my last baby, third and last, in October. And so I knew I was going to be on maternity leave from October to about February. So I was like, you know what? I want the manuscript done before.
Mm.
So I actually wrote it a little while back and then turned it in. And then edits started right as the pandemic hit. So there
Wow.
were a couple of things that I was like, okay, all right, I can actually use some. I actually changed some
Yeah.
stories in it
Okay.
because of things I learned in the pandemic already. So it was mostly written before it, which thankfully nothing really needed to be changed because of it specifically. But I was able to add kind of a different perspective because it will forever be something that we remember in our country, right? It's
Yes.
not like this flippant thing. I mean, it is a real thing with real problems and has caused a lot of people lots of issues,
Yeah.
for sure. And so, yeah, but it was an interesting perspective reading back through it.
For sure. Now, talking about knowing yourself, do you feel like the pandemic has made us, like, has it shown our true colors? Are we acting a little bit different? I mean, are we doing things that we normally would do, or are we turning into somebody else?
I think we've just been magnified of who we really are. And so
Yeah.
I think if you had a level of fear that always kind of functioned and anxiety in you, this magnified it. If you weren't that great with money, but you could kind of cover things here and there,
Yeah.
this magnified it. I mean, I think what ended up happening is a lot of people, again, everything was just magnified. And so financially, Warren Buffett always said, when the tide goes out, you can see who is skinny dipping. And so I feel like we saw that in the
Yes.
recession. I think we saw that here. And so my prayer is that this was kind of everyone's wake up call to their money specifically of, hey, you have to have this never again moment of, you know what, I'm never going to be stressed out and freaked out like I am during the pandemic with my money, whether you're furloughed, laid off, or fearful of that happening, or your business, entrepreneurs listening, like your business closing. I mean, all of that, right? There's a lot of real fear out there. And so realizing, okay, maybe I need to put myself, my business in a better position. So if the tide ever goes back out, that we're good.
Yes. Yeah, I think it definitely showed us whose businesses were a little bit more fragile than we wanted it to be. And it really shined a light on those weaknesses. So I
Yes, yes.
completely agree with you. Now, why this book? Why now? What was like the catalyst behind it, and what made you think to say, I need to get this out there?
Well, a lot of it kind of started in my own personal life. Probably 3, 4 years ago, I did some counseling. I was reading some books on just self awareness,
Yeah.
learning myself more. And I realized, wow, like using the self awareness of why I do the things I do, it's improved my marriage, being a wife, it's improved me being a mom, it's improved me and my team at work. Like,
Yeah.
and then I realized, okay, is it improving my money? And I realized it is. I'm starting to
Mm,
question, why am I doing the things I'm doing? And at Ramsey Solutions for almost 3 decades, we've taught everyone how to budget, how to get out of debt, how to invest, how to build wealth, how to retire, how. But we don't always ask the question, why? Why am I doing the things I'm doing with money? So I kind of see this book as going under the surface
yeah.
and really focusing on who you are. Because once you can understand yourself, you can make better choices, create better habits. We always say that personal finance is 80% behavior, it's only 20% head knowledge. But that behavior, if you don't know why you're doing that behavior, it's really hard to win with money in the long
Yeah.
term. So understanding yourself is not just for self-awareness sake, but to use it as a tool to help you win with money faster.
Yeah, I love that. And what's so like I think interesting to me is how you can grow up in the same household as your siblings and you can be a completely different person. Why? How does that happen?
Isn't that wild? Well, a lot of the research I did for this book really showed it's 50-50. I mean, there's nature and
Okay.
there's nurture. I mean, so much of it is literally your DNA, and then it's also your environment. But just like you're saying, I mean, you can ask siblings the same story of an event
Yeah.
and you have totally different perspectives because of their personality, how they saw at their age, all of it. And so diving into your childhood is where I really start this book out, because understanding how you grew up with money and the
Yeah.
way you viewed it in your perspective is really important, because it forms and shapes so much of how you handle money now, whether you are imitating exactly what your parents did, or for some people,
Right.
they do the exact opposite. And they're like,
Yes.
I want to be completely opposite of that. And so it's fascinating to go back and pinpoint. And that's part of the answering that question, why do I handle money the way I do? And a lot of it starts with your childhood.
Yeah. And I love in the book you talked about how you perceived what was going on in the family. And then you went to your parents and it was a little different. And I'm going to ask them that. I want to ask my siblings too, before I even ask my parents, what was your perception of our childhood? Like I'm very curious to see, because you're right, it completely shapes us, and that perception can shift really what happened. So I love
That's
that.
right.
So knowing that we have these money classrooms, you call them, can we just kind of walk through them very quickly?
Yes, absolutely. Well, the way money is communicated in a household is two ways: verbally and emotionally. So, verbally is
Mhm.
obviously what is said and what is spoken. And emotionally, it's just the sense, the feeling in the home, right? And
Yeah.
so you're either verbally open or closed, and emotionally, you're either stressed or calm with money. So it kind of ended
Okay.
up being these 4 quadrants. So the first quadrant is the anxious classroom. And this is where high stress
Yeah.
emotionally and closed verbally. So it's not talked about, but there's a lot of stress. And that anxious classroom, a lot of people, felt that. And it's really interesting
Mhm.
talking to people that grew up in this type of classroom, because again, nothing was really said. Money was never talked about.
Yeah.
But man, when the end of the month would come, or you're at the grocery store with your
Yeah.
mom and her choices, and like, oh, I mean, you could just feel the stress going on.
Mhm.
And so for a lot of people in this classroom, you have to learn to still engage.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are like, oh, money equals stress, right? Like, I'm going to just back out. And no, you have to still be in there and engage.
Yeah. And I think, it just goes to show you this book you wrote really is going to stand the test of time, because you wrote it pre-pandemic. But let's talk about maybe what's going on in business owners' homes, where you might not be telling your children or maybe spouse even how bad it might be, but they can feel it. They
That's
can
right.
sense it, right? There is no way that this hasn't impacted your behavior. And even not talking about it, they're going to feel it. So, do you recommend for somebody who maybe is a little bit more quiet, not sharing, what should we be sharing? What does that look like?
Yes. Yeah. Well, especially if you're married, you and
Yeah.
your spouse, you guys need to talk about it. And so whether the kids see that conversation, that can be a little bit later, but
Yeah.
first start there. And talking about money is hard. It can be very vulnerable if you're not used to doing it. It can be scary. I mean, all of it. But if you
Yeah.
need to find someone, whether it's your spouse, if you're married, if you're not married, find a friend, find someone that you feel comfortable being like, hey, here's what's going on financially. You need two brains kind of in this operation.
Yeah.
And then with your kids, yes, start talking about it. Share, but don't scare. So there's a level of information that they
Yeah.
do need to know. And some of it too is more is caught than taught. So some of it really is this, they're watching you as well. And so
Hmm.
are they seeing you budget? Are you talking to them about decisions? Hey, we're going to go here on vacation this year. We really want to go here, but mom and dad are saying no because we don't have the money. They're starting to see, okay, mom and dad have boundaries, they have
Yeah.
limits. And so you start to just integrate these conversations slowly. But again, it can be very awkward if you're not used to it. But talking about it, making it a free topic, because it's not a shameful topic. It can feel shameful because of our money mistakes that we've made. But overall, it doesn't need to be a shameful topic. Money is a tool. And when you can present that for your kids, that's huge.
Yeah, and I think in some way we think we're protecting them, but why not use this to educate them and share these valuable life lessons so that they can see what's really happening? But like I love that you said, share, not scare. There are some situations where our children are not maybe old enough, mature enough, they can understand this, and we don't want to scare them.
Yeah,
So
if you're being
absolutely,
foreclosed on, probably not good to be
yes,
running around screaming that. Just
yeah,
as long as they know that they're safe, they're going to
yes.
be taken care of. It's good. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah. I love that. Now, in the book, you talk about these 7 different money tendencies. And I found it interesting when I could relate to, ooh, I'm definitely this one. And then sometimes I'm like, I don't know. I kind of go back and forth. I was having an identity crisis. So let's kind of talk about these 7 different things. So you mentioned in the book experiences or things. Do you want to just explain what
Yes.
that means?
Yeah, this was a big one for me because it was kind of a light bulb moment in my own
Okay.
marriage where I was
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, I get that now. Because when Winston and I would spend money, there wasn't always, there was not necessarily tension because we did a
Yeah.
budget. I mean, we kind of did the textbook, obviously Ramsey Solutions way.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would say things like, just get a glass of wine at dinner early on in marriage, right? When we were like still broke. I was like, get a glass of wine at dinner. It's fine. He's like, no, what this glass of wine costs, I could buy a bottle later. No, I'm not doing that. I'm like, just enjoy the dinner. It's like, I don't need to. And then he'd go and, buy, I don't know, a gadget for the household or something. And I'm like, really? We could have gone out to a nice dinner. He's like, no, but we can reuse this over and over. All that
Yeah.
to say, he values more things to spend money on. I value
Mhm.
experiences. And so just understanding that really
Yeah.
helps you communicate with those around you for sure, but also knowing that in yourself to be like, okay, this is what this is what I value. So yeah, it's that experience. Do you enjoy that, spending money on that versus actual things?
Yeah. And I think when I was reading that, it was really clicking for me, sort of when I read love languages and you realize, oh,
Yeah.
he likes this, I like this, right? You understand your spouse better. And as I was reading this too, I'm like thinking, this is maybe why he doesn't want to do this, but he would all of a sudden drop, X amount of dollars on this thing, right? So I really kind of took it as I need to understand who I am. And then I need to figure out who my husband is when we're spending money together, right? Like getting on
That's
that
right.
same page.
Yes, and neither one is right or wrong, right? Just like
Okay.
the love language is right, neither one is right or
Yeah.
wrong. But just being able to pinpoint it and say it out loud, I was like, man, if we had just realized that the first 3 years of marriage, there wouldn't have been this like weird, like who, what,
Yeah, because
why?
I think it sends mixed signals when maybe he won't spend that money on wine and then he'll go to Amazon or something and purchase. And you're like, I don't get it, right?
Yes,
But when you
exactly.
understand the reason why behind what he's doing, all of a sudden it makes a lot more sense.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. And another tendency is quality over quantity.
Mm.
And I kind of fall in the middle here, but I'm probably more quantity. So I
Okay.
would rather have 20 pairs of cheap earrings just to choose from
Okay.
than like 1 or 2 nice pairs of, whatever
Yeah.
it is. And so
Yeah.
again, opposites attract. My husband's the opposite. He is quality all the way. He could have
Okay.
literally 2 pairs of jeans. And he's like, but if they're nice and well made, that's all I need. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I want an option of all the different types I can have. And they can just be cheap, $30 jeans. I'm good.
Right.
But seeing that, yeah, it's interesting. And then each one has like kind of their own thing, right? So quality people, what they value,
Yeah.
there you have to watch out for a couple of things of realizing, okay, do I always just want the best of the best of the best? Would you ever settle for anything lower? Because you can kind of start to find your identity and the
Okay.
things you have. And then quantity people, we're more apt to spend money when we're stressed or we just kind of need that hit of dopamine of like, oh,
Yeah.
that just feels good. Oh, because it's just $20. Like, oh yeah, it's fine. It'll be fine.
No
It'll be
big
fine.
deal.
And you can just acquire and that can start
Yeah.
masking other things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, recently people, they're like maybe organizing their house like crazy and they're getting rid of things, but they're also bringing some more things in and they're starting to
Yes.
spend a little bit more. So to understand who you are and who you're being right now, like you said, it's just being magnified. How do we look at that and check that out? I love that. Now, in here too, you talk about saver versus spender, like who you naturally are, and even like quantity versus quality. I feel like, how do I say this? I've changed as I've, aged, as I've,
Yeah.
grown into different stages. So do you see that a lot where people maybe really valued quantity versus quality and then something happens and they switch? Does that happen a lot?
Yeah, for sure. I think life changes, you change with it, all of that.
Okay.
Yes, spender saver more though, I would say would be innate. So I challenge people in that section specifically
Okay.
to go back to as you were as a child.
Okay.
'Cause that kind of just shows your natural tendency. And I'm a natural spender. My
Okay.
husband, natural saver. We're literally the opposite ends of every spectrum
Yeah.
here. But I've learned to save. So I invest, I save money. We put X amount away of our income. Like
Yeah.
I save money, but my natural inkling is to spend still.
Okay. So I love that. So you're saying naturally you can be one way, but you can still be good at the other one.
Yes. And
Okay.
I think for all these quadrants as well, I talk about moderation. You're naturally going to lean one way or the other, and identifying that's really important. But any extreme is unhealthy, right? Like if you're an
Okay.
extreme spender and all you do is spend, you're going to be broke.
Yeah.
If you save and all you do is just hoard your money, you're not going to have any fun, enjoy, and then you're going to have a false sense of security of what money brings you. So, like,
Yeah.
both major extremes can be dangerous. So, there is a moderation, but yes, savers
Okay.
can learn to spend and spenders can learn to save.
Okay, that makes me feel better because I was
Yes.
thinking, I feel like I'm in the middle for some of these, and that might be a good thing that I can fall in the middle there a little bit.
Yeah, there's a lot of health in the middle
Yes.
for sure. Yeah.
Good, good. One of those was safety versus status. Let's go there, because some people might be thinking, well, how could status ever be a good thing, or how could? And you kind of say in the book, like there's some things that you enjoy and you do go. So let's talk about that.
Yes. Yeah. This is the main question of asking people, why do you want to win with money?
Okay.
And I ask that question because I walk people through how to get out of debt and how to budget and all these things to eventually win with money.
Yeah.
But why? What's your motivation? And for some people, it's strictly security. I
Mm.
just want to feel safe. I just want my money in order. I want money in the bank. That's it. Like everything else, like I can do secondary, but like my primary motivation is just to feel safe. Some people's primary motivation is to live the life they want. They want to go on great vacations. They want to drive a nice car. They want to have a nice house. They want to go out to eat whenever they want. Like they want money to work for them in the life that they want. So that's the status. Status can seem negative, and I
Yeah.
don't mean it to be in this,
Yeah.
but it's your primary reason of why do you want to win with money? What are those
Yeah.
two things? And for a majority of women, they lean more with safety.
Okay.
That's a big thing with women. And men are more status, where of course my husband, we're the opposite.
Yeah.
I'm more status. I'm like, I want to enjoy a great trip. So
Yeah.
I'll go on back before pandemic, I'm like, I'll go on an extra speaking gig,
Yeah.
make a commission, and we can use that and go on a better vacation. Like that's how I do it, where he's like, nope, let's just save and have some extra money here. We need X amount in the bank by the
Yeah.
end of the year. And I'm like, really? And that's your reason to work extras to get that, So your
Mhm.
primary reason of why you want to win with money.
Yeah. When you were looking at these and evaluating yourself, was there any one of them that surprised you when you realized who you were?
It was the status and safety,
Oh,
the
okay.
one we're talking about. Yeah, I we'll get probably into this in a little bit, but one of
Yeah.
my financial fears is the lack of security. I do want to feel safe, so I always
Okay.
kind of thought safe, but the more I dug into it and the more I really contemplate, I'm like, man, I kind of am more status, and there can be danger with both
Yeah.
again, but there's danger with status where I can definitely fall into what people think of me, and that's
Mm.
one reason that put me in counseling like 4 years ago, where I was like, oh my gosh, I can't live like this anymore.
Yeah.
And I've been really freed from a lot of that, but that's still like the evil part of me, small percentage is still in there, where I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't want to care what people think, but there's a percentage that I do. And that's where the status can get unhealthy for me.
Yeah. And
So it
I
was
think
convicting. As I was typing it out, I was like, oof, this is for me. This is
Yeah.
all for me.
Now, we have a lot of women that listen to this show. And I think for women, especially, it can be very easy to let those opinions start to negatively impact us. I think there's a lot of fear around admitting maybe business is not great, or that they've, maybe they're not going to gross what they were grossing last year, or they're going to have a cut in their payroll and things like that. So let's talk about fear a little bit, because I mean, fear has been a pretty big theme for a lot of people, in the last 12 plus months. So knowing that you do bring up fear in this book, I think, like I said, I think your book was the perfect timing. It's one of those things where it's a God thing, right? Like we needed this book to come out, and it was just such a good time because fear has now been such a huge part of it. So, can you talk about the different types of fear that you discuss when it comes to money?
Yes. Well, I talked to Dr. Chip Dodd and he explains fear. I loved it. He said, fear is actually a gift. When fear starts to overwhelm you and overtake you and paralyze you, that turns into anxiety.
Mm.
But just present fear, it really is your almost your body's way of saying, I need help.
Yeah.
Something is off, so I need to do something. So it almost puts you into action at times. So there's a healthy part of fear, really, that we can use fear to say, you know what, I'm doing something wrong and this doesn't feel right. I need to change what I'm doing, which is what a lot of business people experience for sure that own their own businesses, the pandemic of, okay, I got to shift something. This is not happening right. Okay, I have some fear. So we need to shift our marketing. We need to shift the way we're doing things, the way we're messaging out to our consumers. We need to shift some of our products. Like it causes you to have action. So there actually is a healthy level of fear. But when fear starts to paralyze you and it's the only filter you use to make decisions, that can be very dangerous. But the first fear I talk about is that lack of security. This is a huge one for a lot of people. If something happens, are we going to be okay? That's a question so many people ask. And again, especially during the pandemic, and realizing, okay, what are the things, if that is your primary fear, what can you do to overcome that and actually make it subside a little? What can you put into place? And simple things like the emergency fund, actually having money in the bank, that really does help that level of fear subside. Another fear I talk about is I don't want to end up like my parents. There's kind of been this boomerang generation with the baby boomers that end up coming back and living with their kids because they haven't saved for retirement. They haven't planned well. And I've heard so many adult children say, I don't want that to be me. I do not want to end up like that. That is not what I want to do. So that's a big fear when people look back and say, wow, how my parents did it, I don't want to. And I even talked to a few people when writing the manuscript. Their parents are the opposite. Their parents were so consumer obsessed, and they were so obsessed with what everyone thought. I mean, they spent so much money to keep up appearances, and now they're just like disgusted by stuff. They're like, I'm good. I'll be a minimalist and be happy because my parents had everything and they were miserable. So it's fascinating looking back at your parents and saying, okay, that for people that's a huge fear.
Yeah. What are other things like when we're talking about what we can control, what we can't control? How do we, I love in the book when you brought up how we don't make the best decisions when we're in that flight or fight mode.
Yeah.
And we've been in that for quite a while. So how do we make sure we're making the right decisions or just smart decisions with our money right now?
Yeah, for sure. Well, on the personal finance side, if you are someone that you're having to close part of your business or that income is not coming in the way it was, then you have to adjust. Some people just want to bury their head in the sand and just say, everything's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine. You know what? That's great. And Pollyanna, but you need to look at the facts. Facts are your friend. And fear is a terrible financial advisor. So you have to look at the facts. So if you are in a position where things are looking different and income has come down, then you need to pull back. You may be in a position where you're like, you know what, we're going to just save right now. We're going to pause everything we're doing and just pile up cash. But then on the other end, some people are fearful when nothing has really changed. Businesses have continued on. There hasn't really been a big dip. And that is true for a lot of businesses out there. So if that's it, you can't just function in that fear and be paralyzed. You have to continue moving on. But when you start to see the yellow light come up and, okay, things are shifting again. And okay, wow, my industry really is starting to go down. It didn't early on, but now it is. Then pause everything and start saving. So I think that's the key, is just really having to determine where you are, but not letting fear be the one that paralyzes you.
Yeah.
And then having a plan, a budget. Very simple. You can do that on the personal side and also in your business, but know where your money's going. Have goals, and that's what your budget is. It's like, hey, this is what we're shooting for. This is where everything's going, and have that plan. Again, facts are your friends. When you have things on paper, on an Excel sheet, whatever it is, the template that you have, it makes you breathe easier because you're like, okay, this is true. My emotions can get the best of me, but these are the facts. This is what I need to do. But if you don't have that and it's all in your head, it can get very messy and you can make bad decisions.
Yeah, we talk about knowing your numbers. And like you said, you've got to get out of denial. Some people are in denial where they maybe have had a hard hit and you couldn't tell by looking at what they're doing and their expenses and all of that. We've had to make I have a brick and mortar. So my brick and mortar, we've had to make some drastic changes. We also have an online consulting company that hasn't been hit. So we can do things differently there. But you've really got to, like you said, know your numbers, because
Yes,
that's how you take the action that's actually going to do something for you. When you know what you've got, like when you know where the leak is in the roof, you can go there and fix it. If you don't
that's
know
right.
where it is, it can be really difficult.
Absolutely. And then the change is really hard for people as well.
Yeah.
Changing your behavior and changing what you've been doing is difficult because when you've been doing the same thing over and over again and it's worked, but now all of a sudden we're in this new world and it's not working anymore, it can be very uncomfortable and very scary to take that risk to change. But sometimes that's what you're forced to do and you have to. And in a
Hmm.
good way, it can really bring out a lot. I've seen so many companies shift the way they're doing things. And we have this little sports camp program in our area, and they have like 6 week classes and they do
Yeah.
multi sports for little kids. And when the pandemic, they for months, obviously they were closed
Yeah.
down. And then we got an email early August, and they were like, "Any homeschool pods in the area, we'll come out and do recess for you." So like they're just
Wow.
like, I'm
Yeah.
like, I look at them like, brilliant. That is so
Yes.
brilliant. Like they're shifting the way they're looking, and
Yeah.
they're changing. And it may not be comfortable and fun because it's different, but
Right.
but they're still doing something. They have action still in place.
And I'm sure it's not comfortable, because anytime you change something up and you've never done it, there is that uncertainty. But this is the time to just be proactive and try and start throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. And knowing that it's time to start to make those shifts. So I love, this is just so great. I'm so excited for people to go and grab your book. Where, any last minute, last piece of advice you want to share with somebody, and then let us know where to grab your book and just go devour it right away.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think just digging in and again asking that question, why? It answers so many questions. It can dig up some things that you're like, oh, I don't like that about myself. I don't like
Yeah.
that's why I do that. Or I do this because there's a strength. So it's that strength and weakness and letting that really come to the surface and using it. And I wrote this book at the end, the conclusion. I said, I didn't write this for just self-awareness,
Yeah.
aha moments, but using it as a tool to say, you know what, I'm going to actually implement the things I'm learning about myself and my personal finances and my business, the way I'm running it with my team, and really say, okay, I'm a whole person. So I'm going to use this information and actually change my habits for the better. And in turn, with your money, you win with money faster. You don't have to white knuckle your way through sacrificial times of like, oh, we're getting out of debt, so we're going to just bear it. No,
Yeah.
understand, why did I get into debt in the first place? What brings me joy in this process? There's so much about us. We're very complex people, all of us.
Yeah.
But man, once you start to hit that surface, so much good comes from it. But yeah, know
Hmm.
yourself, know your money. It's anywhere books are sold. You go to rachelcruze.com, daveramsey.com, and purchase it there, or again, anywhere the books are sold.
Amazing. Rachel, thank you so much for all you do. Your message has never been more important right now. So we just appreciate you so much. You guys go grab Rachel's book. It is phenomenal. I've already read it. You've got to go get it. So thank you again, Rachel.
Thanks for having me.